G shape, A chord, pentatonic, and major scale position number 1, or E shape, A chord, scale position. Get ready, because it's time to rock and or roll. Here we are in our worksheet, remembering that we have the top string on top, that being the low or heavy E, the one closest to the ceiling, the high E on the bottom, the one closest to the floor, the 0 representing the open fret, meaning if indicated, we would not be putting our finger on it, but ringing it out as open. Then the frets 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, the ones that we would be putting our finger down on if indicated in this case by the orange items. We're now looking at the G shape in the A chord position, and let's recap first the G shape in the open position we looked at last time. This is the G shape in the open position. When you hear the word G shape, then you want to be able to say it's a G shape when in the open position, which you don't usually say, but that's what you want to keep in your mind so that you have the capacity to move it up in your mind and still see it as a G shape without making it contradict the fact that it's also now in an A chord type of position, because that's where your fingers are now located. If you look at the open position up top, you're going to locate the root by typically this item right here on the E string, top string, low string. That's going to be a G. So that's how you're going to name it when you move all the whole thing up. You can name it in that way. Also note that this is not your standard type of bar chord, as we saw with the A being something that you typically want to be able to re-finger so that you can move it up very nicely and have a nice full chord. This is something that if you were trying to re-finger it would be quite difficult to do when you move it here and you don't have those same open items that you could ring out, but would have to bar them in some ways. Many people see that and say, well, I'm just going to throw up my hands and not deal with the idea that the G shape could move up. But that's not what you want to do, because the idea here is not simply that you're gonna try to ring out the same shape in another position to voice, say, an A chord in another position. You might say, I already know how to make an A chord in the open position. I don't need another way to voice it. That's not just the point. That's not the only point. The point is that you can basically now see where you are, locate where you are on another 4 frets of the fretboard. And you also could play out with this shape if you're going to be using a picking type of style. You're using the same fingers and you're just fingering it the same way. Or if you're using a finger picking type of style, then this will be a common shape that you could do, because you could pluck the top and low strings instead of strumming across the strings. And of course, you can arpeggiate this shape as well. So you want to see it as one of the shapes within the system so that you can move it up. And when you convert it to a pentatonic shape, it's also like one of the most common shapes in the form of basically the pentatonic type of shape. So if someone was playing an A chord or something like that, you wanted to switch things up a little bit differently, you can move up here and again possibly not play this whole thing and strum it, but possibly create something with regards to arpeggiating some of these items, possibly working somewhere down here and then arpeggiating along with the song. If we then look at the A and scroll over and do our standard kind of music theory stuff and just take all of our notes from A to A, do our whole half kind of steps, we would go from A, whole step to B, whole step to C sharp, half step to D, whole step to E, whole step to F sharp, whole step to G sharp, then it resolves back to A. So that would mean that the notes in the A scale would be A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. We can number them from 1 to 7 to create the actual chords. We would need an A, C sharp, and E, the 1, 3, 5. If we look at what we have here, that's what we would expect to see. There's our A, there's our C sharp, there's our E, there's an A, there's a C sharp, and there's an A. So you can see if you were able to finger this whole thing, you're talking about 6 chords or 6 notes, and you only need 3 notes for a chord. So you can have many different combinations that you can try to use to either arpeggiate or make some other voicing of the chord, remembering that you don't have to have the lowest note on top in order to make a chord. You just need a combination of the A, the E, the C sharp. So then let's go ahead to the pentatonic shape over here. I'm going to unhide some cells, unhiding some cells, and wait, I hid cells. I'm trying to unhide the cells. Okay, so there we go. Now we've got our pentatonic shape. This is going to be the shape, what I would call shape number 1, because it's the first one that a lot of people kind of learn. This is the major kind of, if you say pentatonic shape to somebody and they're learning something and they don't know a whole lot, but they might know this shape, right? So they're going to know some open chords. You're going to know some G's, a G chord, a chord, a C chord, and this shape oftentimes. And oftentimes they'll learn this shape up top in, like I have, basically in the middle of the guitar, right? That's what I basically started with. It's a great place to start because then you've got this shape that you're going to learn in the middle, and you can expand out and you're learning those open positions over here in the form of chords, which you can kind of combine together in the future. So now you can see this and you can say, well, yeah, there's a G, there's kind of like a G shape inside of that, what I would call position 1. And the reason I'd call it position 1 is because I'm going to learn it in the home base of the C major or A minor, which would be right here. That would mean that this would be the root, and if the relative minor would be that A in this position. So if you take that concept and we move it on over to the pentatonic position here, you can then call it, you could say, well, this is going to be an A, well, it's going to be a G shape. You can call it a G pentatonic shape in the key of A, right? That's one way you could name it. You could basically say it's a G shape, it's a G shape pentatonic scale in the key of A. And when you're saying it's a G shape, it's because you're basically fingering your same G kind of shape here, which is really putting your fingers down here to make you feel like a G, and these would be open normally, but you can mute them or something like that. You put your fingers down, you're pointing to the A right there, so you can say, yeah, that's now the root of the chord that I'm going to be looking at. And so you're going to say it's a G shape if it were in the open position, which now it's moved up to an A chord, and then you can call it an A, G shape A chord scale. So a G shape pentatonic scale in A, because that's where you've moved up that shape. And that's one way you can try to get that scale and put it into the shape on the fretboard that we're working with, and very common shape. Now, if you go back then to the starting point, you can see the relative minor with this shape, which would be the F sharp. That's a nice thing to be able to do as well, because then you're looking at the relative minor, which has the same notes in it, which could be useful information. So then you can basically pick around with this. You can try to approximate different voicings of chords and so on, adding then the notes in the pentatonic scale, or pick along with a song that might have an A in it, either as the root of the song or as the song progresses. Then, of course, you can expand on that and add the major scale. So now you're looking at, you could call this then the G shape when it was in the home position, major scale shape on the guitar, right? So you're saying it's a G shape when in the home position in the key of A, because we've moved it up, and we know that when I put my fingers in this position, my finger is now on an A note, making it an A note, and then major scale, A major scale. Once again, the major scale is not the same thing as the chord. The chord only having 3 notes, the scale having 7, but you're naming basically where you're pulling those notes from, using basically this position. If you're thinking about the positions in terms of a cage type system, in terms of 5 basically units on the guitar, this would be the shape that you could name and tell people kind of where you are in the fretboard. I'm playing this G type of location shape, but it's playing an A, a G, as if it was playing the root note on the A, and then I'm playing the chord. I'm picking around the chord. Not the scale around that, the major scale around that, adding the few other notes to be added on top of that. Therefore, if someone was playing a song, you can then arpeggiate it with the orange. You can expand on it with the blue, which would be the pentatonic, the next safest thing to do, and then expand on it with the full notes in the major scale. If we take a look at the key of A again, we've named them from 1 to 7. If you were to build a song in the key of A, typically you would be saying you could pick from these chords, which would be an A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, and then diminished G sharp often dropped off. You could do the 1, 4, 5, which would be the A major, the D major, and the E major. If you're playing in A, D, and E as the song progresses, and you're trying to just kind of improvise on top of that, you can then stay in the key of A if you so choose in this position, and you could basically pick around in the arpeggio, expand then to the pentatonic, expand to the major scale, and experiment there. Or you can go, as the song progresses, you could try to move the shape to like a D and an E if you would like to work in basically that same shape, noting that this is going to be the root of the chord. So we've got the C, we've got the D, and so on. And then you can kind of follow along or chase the song as the chord progressions change, a bit more challenging.